Yo, what's up, guys? Happy New Year. We're back for another year of breakdown and predictions. We got the first UFC fight night of the year. Magomed Ankalaev versus Johnny Walker 2. They're going to handle some unfinished business here. And just right before we get started, I want to recap last year just really quick and just give you guys a little bit of updates. But yeah, last year I feel like it wasn't one of my best years in terms of predictions or betting. And there were some, personal things, distractions that happened, and just at the end of the year, man, I feel like I was pressing a lot to try to get more units or do better for myself and for everyone on Patreon, everything like that, and just kind of made some amateur mistakes, man. Just kind of lost confidence in some of my picks, was doing things that I wouldn't normally do, and can't be doing that, so that's definitely on me and that's my fault. We still were profitable on the year. We were around plus 15 units profit, so it's not like I had a negative year or a horrible year or anything like that, but just to my standards, it was really not what I want to be giving, so I'm definitely going to be looking this year to go back to the way that I was a couple years ago and how I was consistently growing, getting better, and I'm still, top 20 in the world in non-reckless bettors on Bet MMA tips, and I'm still, very high in terms of units profit, things like that. So definitely still doing fine, but just last year was not the year that I wanted. So this year I'm going to be really emphasizing doing a lot better, not kind of falling into those mistakes, and you just got to take self accountability with some things. So just things that I really was disappointed that I did towards the end of the year that I really shouldn't have been doing betting wise. So that's not going to happen this year, and we're going to definitely have a better year. And I'm going to be doing more content on here for sure. I already have one show that I have locked in that I'm going to be doing on Fridays, so that's going to be happening throughout the year. I'm going to bring on a couple other people, so be on the lookout for that. And what other content do you guys want to see? Do you want to see more betting type content? Do you want to see different type of opinion content? Put down in the comments what you want to see, like props, parlays, what type of videos would you guys be interested in? And besides that, man, if you want to go to Patreon right now, this month, I am going to be doing a free trial. So it's risk-free. You can go over there. You could check it out for the month of January. You could sign up. Don't pay anything. You get access to me at any time. You could ask me a question. You get different content as well. I'm going to be putting a LFA predictions video on Patreon tomorrow. Going to be putting stuff for UFC 297 already pretty soon on the Patreon as well this week. So if you want to go over there, you want to try a free month, help out the channel. I've been doing this for a long time, so I think deserves some support, especially when I am, one of the best people online currently giving free advice in terms of tracked winnings and things like that. So definitely go over there, patreon.com/MMA Prediction Guru, sign up for a free month and get access to that content, get access to all my bets, and let's go to the moon this year. So let's get it. But yeah, man, let's get into this fight night card. Let's get into this first fight of the night here. We got Felipe Bunes, he's taking on Joshua Van, and Van kind of announced himself as a guy to watch at the end of last year, right? He was 2-0 in the UFC, and he fought really quick 2 times in a row, and he actually just fought November 11th, so he's making pretty fast turnaround as well here. He's 22 years old, so definitely, a young prospect on the rise. And he's going to be taking on Felipe Bunes, who is going to be making his UFC debut here after having a couple opportunities to debut, but just things not going his way. He had, I think, an issue on the scales against Denise Bondar. And so he's 34 years old and making his debut. He definitely needs to go in there, look impressive, and try to get up in the rankings quick if he wants to really do anything in the UFC. But a lot of experience. I mean, his last fight, he won the LFA title, and he's fought high-level opponents. It's not like Joshua Van is going to be the best fighter that Bunes has been in the cage with, so that should help him out here. And Felipe Bunes, he's a big fighter for the weight class. He has a long reach. He's a bit stiff, but he is aggressive, pressures forward. He'll throw 3-2s, 2-3s, and He mixes in a lot of front kicks, spin kicks, and good ability to take damage and keep coming forward. He has good composure. When he connects, he has power, and he will brawl, but I feel like speed and versatility-wise, he's not on the same level of a Joshua Van. Joshua Van, primarily a boxer, but very slick, fast. He throws nice combos. He stays active with leg kicks, and he likes to walk guys down as well. And he can be a little bit flat-footed, and definitely I think he stays heavy on his lead leg so he can let the jab off, and that could end up being an issue for him against good leg kickers. But in this fight, I don't really think it's going to be much of an issue, and his jab is nasty. I mean, he can let off fast single jabs, double jabs, triple jabs, 1-2s. He'll attack the body, and pretty slick boxer. I mean, he does a good job throwing combinations, good eyes. He could slide out of the way, then come back with punches, and sometimes he can walk into strikes, like we did see him get dropped in his last fight, but once he gets his rhythm, he's pretty difficult to hit, and I think he needs to be a little bit looser, just not as flat-footed as he goes up in the rankings, so he can avoid those leg kicks and just be a little bit more evasive. But he's young right now. He can continue to push the pace. He could take damage and keep coming, and we saw him kind of break Kevin Borjas in his last fight, but not much of a wrestler or grappler, Joshua Van, but he is hard to control. He throws up submissions to create scrambles, and he's pretty good at hurting someone and then catching a submission. So if you look at his lone loss, he did lose via rear naked choke, but I feel like his wrestling defense is good. In this fight, he definitely doesn't want to end up on the ground with a guy like Bunes, because I think Bunes is a lot better on the mat, but if Van could keep it standing, he's going to do well. When you look at Felipe, he's a guy that has pretty good singles and doubles, and he usually shoots when fighters get over aggressive and come forward at the end of rounds. He'll also shoot to try to kind of steal the round, and more of a top control guy, but he will pull guard too, and he's very dangerous off of his back. I mean, if you look at it, the majority of his wins have been arm bars, and he has a really good triangle as well, so that's kind of his game. So Joshua Van just has to be smart. Like, if he drops Felipe Bunes, or Felipe Bunes fails on a takedown and kind of flops down, don't fall him to the ground. That's going to be very dangerous, and it's kind of silly. So Bunes, you look at his record in decisions, he's only 2-4. So I think if this fight goes longer, that's going to be an advantage for Joshua Van. So early on in this fight, I think it's going to be competitive. If Bunes can land and hurt Van, he could maybe get him out of there via submission, but I think as the fight goes on, Bunes is going to slow down. I think he has issues with the weight cut, older guy, big guy, and I think he's going to get tired, especially if he can't get the takedowns. And ultimately, I feel like Van is going to get better as the fight goes on, and he's going to get better every fight we see him. I think he's going to show improvements. He's been active lately, whereas Bunes hasn't fought in a year, so I'm going to say the first round kind of goes either way, but Van takes round 2 and 3 and wins a decision. So give me Joshua Van in the first fight of the night to win via decision. And moving on to this next fight, we got Tom Nolan. He's taking on Nikolas Motta, and this is a fight that a lot of people kind of are saying that it's an easy fight for Tom Nolan. Tom Nolan came in on the Contender Series, got a really slick knockout. He's an Australian guy, 6-0, so people are pretty high on him, but he hasn't really fought too many top guys, and he's coming in the UFC now with really limited experience, so I'm a little bit worried for him. I think that maybe it was a little bit early, but this fight, it's a good tester fight. It's not necessarily like a super high-level guy, so he's taking on Nikolas Motta, who earned his UFC contract through the Contender Series as well, and joined the UFC in 2022, but just hasn't panned out in the UFC that well. He's 1-2-1 in 4 fights, and last fight where it was a no contest, he was being dominated, outstruck, and then he got put in a deep submission in the 3rd round, and the ref made a mistake, stopped the fight prematurely, and it kind of save Motta from an inevitable loss. So if that wouldn't have happened, we maybe would have seen him being cut right there. But he's getting tossed back in, quickly. Less than 2 months later, he's being given, a guy that I think the UFC sees as a more blue chip type of prospect. So I think the UFC is soured on Motta. They're kind of using him here to get Tom Nolan, who looks like a knockout artist, a victory. And Motta needs to prove to the UFC that he's even UFC level by handing Tom Nolan his first loss. So you look at how these guys match up. I mean, Tom Nolan, he's a massive lightweight, and he's gigantic here in this fight too. He's 6'3", Motta's 5'9". He's going to have a 6-inch reach advantage as well. So style-wise, Nolan, knockout artist. He's got knockouts in his last four fights. He is a dynamic striker, nasty on the inside, very fast, really nice combinations. He has good ability to exit the clinch with short punches, elbows. And on the outside, he throws a lot of kicks, straight punches. Sometimes he can overpunch a little bit, get out of position, and he is a little bit hittable too. But when he lands, it hurts. He can put fighters' lights out, and great accuracy. He turns up. He definitely is a guy that when he sees blood, he's going to go for the kill. And he needs to shape his defense up a bit, though. His one loss, as an amateur, came via knockout. So if Nikolas Motta has anything, it is power. You look at him, he's a brawler. He has real power in his left hook, and Motta also has fast overhands, decent crosses. He'll throw in combination. Motta likes to throw that jab head kick. He tends to load up on his strikes, though, and he drops his hands. He's pretty basic, and Tom Nolan should be able to take advantage of that. And Motta also has a suspect chin. He's been knocked out cold more than one occasion, and he's explosive. I mean, if he can connect on Nolan early, who's hittable, maybe we could see Motta turn the tables on Tom Nolan, but I'm not really that confident that's going to happen. You look at Nolan, he isn't a great wrestler, but he will mix it up and go for takedowns, and he has decent wrestling against the cage. He can posture up on top and throw nasty ground and pounds. Defensively, I don't really think he's a great wrestler. I think someone could eventually expose him in that area. He does have decent front chokes, but in this fight, I just don't think there's too much of a threat of Motta going in there and looking to exploit that in Nolan's game. I mean, he is training at Extreme Couture, so you would think Motta's wrestling leveled up, but you look at his last fight, and Trey Ogden was able to take him down. Trey Ogden was out-grappling him with ease, and it didn't seem like he had really improved too much in that area. So I definitely don't see him being able to go out here and offensively wrestle and grapple his way to a win. So matchup-wise, the UFC is setting Tom Nolan up against an aggressive and chinny fighter who they think he can knock out. And Motta's been knocked out 4 times. He's been finishing all 6 of his losses. So I think that Nolan's going to go out there and probably knock him out in the first round. You could hurt him and get him in a front choke submission and get him out of there, but I think Tom Nolan is going to end up getting the job done and looking good in his UFC debut here. And up next, we got Westin Wilson. He's taking on Gene Silva. And this fight, one of the biggest favorites on the card, if not the biggest favorite, with Gene Silva at minus 800. I think he's at like a minus 900 now in some spots. And he's taking on Westin Wilson. So you look at Gene Silva, he just won his fight in the Contender Series. He's an underdog to get in the UFC, and he trains out of the Fighting Nerds gym, and that gym is just absolutely dominated the Contender Series. I mean, everyone that they've gotten on there has been able to do well, get into the UFC, and most of the time when they get into the UFC, they haven't been kind of one contract and done fighters. They've done well. They've consistently won fights. They got Kyle Barallo, who's up there in the top 10 now. So Silva, like I said, he wasn't an underdog in his fight in the Contender Series. He started kind of rough and was able to dominate down the stretch. But this fight, he's a huge favorite against a guy in Westin Wilson who kind of got brought in the UFC just because they needed a very short notice opponent and almost in an unwinnable situation where he fought Joe Anderson Brito and got knocked out. And 34 years old, I feel like I expect Wilson to be very motivated. I mean, everyone is counting him out, and he's fought 24 times. He has to win this fight to stick around in the UFC and take his career to another level, but it's just, does he have that ability? Especially at this point in his career, it's hard to say. And Gene Silva's a guy that is a beast. I mean, overall, he's 11-2. He's on a 9-fight winning streak. His level of competition has been a bit weak, but I think he looks like a good enough prospect. The majority of his wins have came in the first round. Out of 11 of Silva's wins, 10 are finishes, 9 are first-round finishes. His last fight was actually the first time that he's won a decision. He was 0-2 in decisions before that. And he's a striker primarily. I mean, you see him using a long-bladed stance. He holds his hands low. He has good in-and-out movement. Just kind of barely evade shots, come back with return strikes. He can carry his chin high, and fighters that are going to throw in combination could have success. I actually think that with Westin Wilson's length and just his karate ability to get in, get out, I think until he gets cracked, I think he could be landing some decent shots on Gene Silva. But Silva is super composed, and the moment that he gets his timing and can kind of just get out of the way and then come back with the counter, he's going to be able to hurt Westin Wilson, I think, at a lot higher clip than I think Westin Wilson is going to be able to hurt Silva. You look at Silva, I mean, he has a good jab. He feints the jab really well. Very good hand speed and good pull counters, straights, overhands. He'll go to the body too. And on the inside, he'll throw really nice elbows. He could throw flying knees. He could throw jump kicks. So he's aggressive and pretty creative as well. And I feel like he isn't a super active wrestler or grappler. I don't think he's going to really look to get any takedowns or anything in this fight. And Westin Wilson is a black belt jiu-jitsu who you see him training with John Danaher. So I think that it wouldn't be smart for Gene Silva to go into a guy's guard like that. But training with the Fighting Nerds, you know that his grappling is probably going to be pretty solid. And Westin Wilson, I mean, super flawed guy. He is tall, lengthy, decent straight punches. He throws some kicks too, some knees up the middle. And if he can clip you on the chin, he can hurt you, but super flawed and hittable striker. He has a bad chin. He suffered some bad knockout losses. And like I said, he is a black belt. He has been working with John Danaher prior to this fight, and I think that tells you all you need to know about where he wants this fight to be. I mean, on the mat, Wilson probably is going to have the advantage, and if he can get on top, if he can take the back, maybe we could see an upset victory for Wilson. But you look at Wilson in his last fight, he kind of played that jiu-jitsu game. He went for a knee bar and got ground and pounded out cold, so that could also be at a detriment. If you're kind of playing that jiu-jitsu game, don't defend yourself, you could end up getting knocked out again. So the issue for Wilson as well is he doesn't have the wrestling or really that ability to close the distance without getting blasted normally. He has to make it a wild kinetic fight and hope somehow he can get on top through the chaos. So at the end of the day, Gene Silva is the clear prediction here. I think he does it in the first round. I think he has too good of accuracy. He throws fast, he throws clean, and I don't trust Wilson's chin. I don't trust his defense. Silva to win into the distance, I think is going to be the prediction for me. So give me Gene Silva, and I think he's going to get the knockout in the first round. And up next, we got Farid Basharat. He's going to be taking on Taylor Lapilus, and highest level fight of the card so far. And Farid, he's kind of slowly moving up the UFC stacked bantamweight division, but soon he's going to be hard to ignore. He's 2-0 in the UFC. He's 15-0 overall in his MMA career. His last fight, he had what many perceived to be a tough opponent in Cleetson Rodriguez, but handled Rodriguez, easily submitting him in the first round. And now he's getting another step up in my estimation when he takes on Taylor Lapilus, who's a longtime veteran of the sport, 19-3, excellent record for Lapilus. And if Basharat can get through this test without much of a problem, he may be close to the rankings. And you look at Taylor Lapilus, he's looking to make the most out of his second chance with the UFC. His first run with the UFC was successful in terms of he was 3-1 in 4 fights, but he didn't get a second contract offered to him. He never really reached the heights he potentially could have. And now, 32 years old, or 32 fights, 31 years old, it's the perfect time, or 22 fights, I'm sorry. And it's the perfect time for him to make a run towards the top. His has won 6 fights in a row, and he was successful in his return fight in the UFC in September. He beat another guy in Colin Lawfrain, who was a pretty decent prospect. He was a Cage Warriors world champion going into that fight. And this fight is an opportunity for Taylor Lapilus to prove that he's the fighter that people should be thinking about as next up. And right now, the Basharat brothers, they're both undefeated. They're tearing it up in the UFC. So if Lapilus can hold this momentum of Farid, he's going to skyrocket up the rankings. But you look at Farid Basharat, he's a super skilled fighter. He overloads guys' brains with all the feints, the stance switches, the volume, and just how evasive he is. He throws a lot out there. I wouldn't say he's an elite striker, but he has a nasty jab, great straight punches. He'll attack the body, attack the head. He mixes in low kicks. He has fast head kicks. He'll throw spinning kicks, jumping attacks. He works more hands primarily in recent fights. He has really good speed, and he'll just touch and move on guys. He's clean. He's accurate. Defensively, he has great eyes, good head movement. He can kind of just slide right out of the way of shots, roll with shots, be a ghost in there. And I feel like fighters who have a really good pressure, kind of a don't give a fuck attitude, that could walk him down and eventually get to Basharat and land on him. But you have to take some to give some to implement that game plan against him. And I feel like Basharat is going to be very hard to deal with for guys that just don't have that gear in them. You look at Basharat as a grappler, a high-level grappler, nice single legs. He's really strong. He has good clinch work. When he gets on top, he's very heavy. He's very active with his ground and pound. Uses ground and pound to open up submissions as well. We saw in his last fight he had a first-round arm triangle, and he has 6 submission wins overall in his career. The previous 5 were all rear naked chokes, so he's good at getting the back and finishing the fight that way too. And he has really good cardio, so he can do his thing for 3 rounds. If fighters get back to their feet, he has the ability to wrestle hard for a prolonged period of time. And I do think he slows down a little bit, but he has a very taxing style, so his cardio is impressive. And defensive wrestling for Basharat is elite. He's extremely hard to take down. And overall, he's difficult to beat because he has great fight IQ. He can mix it up. He's well-rounded. And he fights to win fights, not to finish, not to look flashy. He isn't going to put himself at risk, and he just gets the job done. In order to beat him, I think you're going to need to get in his face, like I said, push the pace, stuff his takedowns, and make it a war on the feet. But you look at Taylor Lapilus, he's a long-range striker with good technical skills. He's going to be slightly taller and longer in this fight, but it isn't as pronounced as it is normally for Lapilus when he's fighting at this weight class. But Lapilus, he likes to pressure fighters on the feet. He stands upright so he can move in and out quickly. Long striking attacks, nice jab, good 1-2s. A lot of front kicks, round kicks to the body. And he's very fast. He's sharp. He's accurate with his pull counters. He isn't quite as flashy as Basharat. He doesn't switch stance too much. He doesn't throw as many feints. He also doesn't nearly throw the same amount of strikes out there. But he is clean, accurate, and a good striker. And I think he's going to play the role of the matador in this fight, or at least try to work behind the jab, and he's going to stay off the cage, try to land pull counters, and try to kind of just be technical as Basharat tries to be fancy to get inside and use the basics to win the fight. But I think Lapilus' grappling and wrestling are where he may run into more issues than in the striking in this fight. Lapilus has improved his takedown defense, but it isn't the greatest. And we saw in his last fight even, he got held against the cage for a long period of time. I feel like he's never been submitted, but he can get held down. And if Basharat gets him to the ground, he could be the first guy to dominate Taylor Lapilus on the mat as well. Lapilus has great cardio. He has a lot of experience, but he only has 4 knockout wins and more of a finesse range striker, and I don't think that's going to be the type of style to hand Basharat his first loss. I think Basharat has seen that finesse striking style with his brother for so long that it's going to be hard to beat him with that style. I mean, I think that Basharat is going to be able to do well at range on the feet. I think he's going to be just a little bit more that new generation type of guy. And I think that he's going to mix in the single leg. I think he's going to get some takedowns. I think he's going to get some clinch control against the cage. And I see Basharat winning a decision here. So give me Farid Basharat in this fight to get the job done and get the victory. And up next here, we got another really interesting fight with McGhee taking on Gaston Bolanos. And McGhee is looking to build on what was an amazing 2023 campaign for him. He was able to go 3-0 with 3 finishes. 2 of those 3 wins were in the UFC. He beat 2 lower-level UFC opponents, but he dispatched them pretty easily, and now he's getting rebooked with the fighter that we've seen him booked with in the past, Gaston Bolanos. So both fighters are familiar with each other, and this should be a fun fight. Gaston Bolanos is a pretty well-known fighter to hardcore fight fans. He is a former Muay Thai champion. He had some sweet knockouts in Bellator, and then debuted with the UFC in April of last year, won that fight via decision in a kind of average performance from him, but was able to get the win. Then he did get scheduled to fight McGhee in August, but had to withdraw from the fight and hasn't fought since. So he isn't that old, but he's fought for a long time. Maybe it's catching up with him. I mean, he's been winning in the cage, but he's had some issues actually staying healthy and competing since 2020. He's only had 3 fights. So hopefully during that time off, he has been able to improve his skills in other areas, when he wasn't fighting. But now he's able to kind of get going and get out there and start to put some more performances on. But you look at Bolanos style-wise, on the feet he's a buzzsaw. He wants to go in there and go shot for shot. He likes to pressure forward. He doesn't really feint or fake much, but very explosive. He explodes with fat straight right hands, heavy leg kicks. He throws leg kicks early and often. He'll throw some wild combinations on the inside, really slick, really unorthodox, and very clean. And nasty uppercuts, nasty spinning elbows. And he can get hit himself coming in. He can kind of overextend and get wild. But he has that capability to land a one-shot knockout blow, so he stays dangerous for the whole fight. And he just puts those weird combinations on you that he's worked on for so long that you don't really see. And then the leg kicks really are impactful as well. And just good timing and good power from Bolanos. But he has a big hole in his wrestling and grappling game. He gives up takedowns pretty easily. He can be held against the cage. He gives his back up when he works to stand back up. And when he can get on top, or when an opponent kind of gets sloppy and lets him get the top position, he's aggressive with his ground and pound, which helped him win his last fight. But he's a guy that definitely has a big hole in his game if fighters want to exploit that. If they keep it standing with Bolanos, though, it's going to be a banger, and probably someone's going to get knocked out. But you look at McGhee, I mean, he's a dangerous striker. He's fast, he's explosive, he has knockout power. He likes to walk opponents down, switch stances, try to back fighters up, and then let go with combinations. And he could slip and rip with pull 1-2s. He has good body punches. He'll rip the body for the whole fight and try to wear you down. Very fast, good eyes, so you can kind of live in the pocket and rely on his head movement, his counters. Stays active with leg kicks, and he'll throw some fast body kicks and head kicks too. And I think he's a better boxer than kicker, but definitely a decent kicker. And he pushes the pace. He tries to find the finish. He's been able to finish all 8 of his wins. He's never gone to decision. And he's not much of a wrestler or grappler himself. I mean, he can get taken down, held down. He's gotten submitted before, but if McGhee has wrestling ability, this would be the fight to bring it out there and go for takedowns, try to mix it up, and exploit that aspect of Gaston Bolanos' game. Because if this fight stays standing, I think the line is off. I mean, I don't see Bolanos being such an underdog in a striking fight against almost anyone at this kind of unranked level. Both fighters are dangerous strikers, but I feel Bolanos is more dynamic. He has more experience in striking fights. Either fighter could land and get the knockout, but I don't think Bolanos has ever been knocked out, and he's had a ton of fights. McGhee's never been knocked out either, so I see this more of a 50-50 stand-up fight. If McGhee has wrestling and he can win that way, then, you gotta tip your cap to him, but he's never done that in previous fights, so you can't really expect him to have a, really depth wrestling game here. I think that this is the best striker that McGhee has ever fought, and I'm going to side with the experience and who I feel is the slightly more technical striker in a fight that I think is going to be more of a striking fight. So I'm going to go with Gaston Bolanos to get the upset here, and I'll say he gets the second round knockout. And up next, we got fight between two prospects here with Preston Parsons taking on Matheus Semelsberger. And Preston Parsons, Matheus Semelsberger, they're two guys that have kind of shown flashes, but just not consistency in the UFC. Matt Semelsberger, he's proved that he's one of the most dangerous fighters in the welterweight division. He's earned 2 knockout wins in under 20 seconds. But he's only gone 4-4 in his 8 fights. He's on a 2-fight losing streak. And this is a make-or-break fight for his career moving forward. Preston Parsons, he's coming into this fight off the heels of a split decision loss to Trevin Giles and what was a competitive fight, but he's now 1-2 in the UFC, so his job also is potentially on the line here. And you look at Parsons, he's an okay striker. He's explosive, he's fast, which helps. He packs some power in his own right, but he stays heavy on the pressure, and he looks kind of land either that straight or the left hook. And that's really all he likes to do. He doesn't really do much else. And I feel like his durability is in question. When you touch him, you definitely could hurt him. If you allow Parsons to go first, kind of boss the fight, he can be an effective striker because fighters are worried about the takedown and he has some speed. But his last fight, he struggled a lot trying to get past Trevin Giles' jab, and he needs to improve his head movement. And in this fight, Parsons has to be very aggressive and close that distance, get his wrestling going, because I don't think he wants to be striking very much with Semelsberger. But with that same thing in mind, he has to kind of avoid running into a strike as he goes in. But Parsons, strong grappler, really nice single leg. He can hit big doubles. He's explosive. He commits to his wrestling, and when he gets on top, he has really good top pressure, slick submission game, really good in scrambles. We've seen him hit some nice sweeps off his back too. And when he gets put on his back, he's just really hard to hold down in general. So he's a great grappler overall, I would say, and his cardio is top-notch. He definitely pushes the pace, so that's a big advantage for him. I mean, you've seen Semelsberger in previous fights get taken down, held down, and get tired, so Parsons needs to wrestle, and kind of push the pace. And Matt Semelsberger, he's a striker. He's a 75-inch reach. He has a 3-inch reach advantage in this fight, and he can be low volume, but he throws really nice 1-2s down the pipe, and his rear cross is very powerful. He'll throw some hard low kicks, and he's going to need to time Parsons as he come in, land the shot, and have a quick night to have the best chance to win here. He needs to pressure forward, try to make Parsons feel uncomfortable so he makes a mistake, and he has to be the guy going first. I feel like if there's more time in the fight, you can't just get him out of there early because Parsons doesn't do that good going backwards. So Semelsberger, his wrestling defense has kind of failed him in the past. In this fight, you have to imagine Parsons is going to be looking to wrestle heavy. So Semelsberger, he's going to have to show better reaction time. He doesn't have the best reaction time when fighters shoot in on him. He's been taken down a lot, and once he's been put on his back, early he could explode and get back up maybe once or twice, but he isn't overly technical, and eventually he can start to get held down. And Semelsberger just has to try to keep it standing in this fight. But it's great matchmaking because both fighters have clear paths to victory. Parsons, he's going to be more active, more aggressive. If he can get takedowns, he can run away with the fight. With Semelsberger, though, he just has that touch of death. And you look at Parsons, he has a questionable chin. So if he can land that knockout shot, he could knock him out. But I'm going to go with Parsons. I'm going to go with the wrestling and the cardio to get it done. And I'm going to say Parsons is able to avoid that knockout strike and get the job done via decision here. So up next, we got Andre Arlovski. He's taking on Waldo-Cortes Acosta. Not really too much to say about this fight. It's hard to give like a super high-level breakdown about what you think is going to happen. I mean, it's pretty obvious. You look at Arlovski, to me, it seems like recently, whenever he's been able to get out of the first round on these guys, or at least out of like the first 7-8 minutes, he's been able to win the decision against these lower-level heavyweights. But he's been facing a lot of slower guys that he's been able to move around and kind of just out-technical with his feints and his speed. With Waldo, we got a guy that has speed, has boxing, has some power, and Arlovski doesn't tend to deal well with that. I don't think Arlovski's going to be able to go out there and take him down. I don't think that Arlovski's going to be able to implement a super high-volume leg kick game like you've seen some other guys do and be effective with against Cortes. So I think Acosta's just at one point going to catch him and knock him out. So whether it's the first round or the second round, I think Waldo-Cortes Acosta is going to get the knockout here against Andre Arlovski. And now we got the main card. We got Phil Hawes. He's taking on Bruno Ferreira. And Phil Hawes, man, he's in dire need of a win on Saturday. I mean, he started the UFC 3-0, and his last 4 fights now he's 1-3. He suffered 2 losses in a row, and all 3 of his losses have came against high-level opponents. The only fighter who Hawes has lost to that wasn't ranked was Iskram Alaskarov, who's 15-1, who's 2-0 in the UFC. And the thing is, though, it's like Hawes, in all of his fights, he's been able to be dominating the fight until he loses. So it's hard to really trust him because he has such a bad chin. But you look at his skills, and he's a skillful guy. But his opponent, Bruno Ferreira, the air kind of came out of the balloon for him in his second UFC fight. He got a huge upset in his debut. He knocked out Gregory Rodriguez, who's arguably a top 15 middleweight in the world. But then Nursultan Ruziboev went in there and knocked out Bruno Ferreira in 1 minute and 17 seconds. So this third fight is kind of pivotal for Ferreira. He's fighting a fighter that's kind of a gatekeeper to the top 15. And if he can beat him, he's going to establish himself as fairly high-level prospect. But if he loses this fight, I feel like he'll be in a winner-get-cut situation for his 4th UFC fight. But you look at his opponent, Phil Hawes, skill-wise, the guy's really good on the feet. He has improved his boxing immensely. He has a nasty jab. He has a really nice lead hook. He'll throw nasty 1-2s, good 1-1-2s. He will end combinations with left hooks to the body sometimes. And his accuracy is on point. He's very clean, sharp, fast. On the inside, he throws elbows well. And I could see the elbows being a factor against Ferreira. But Hawes can kick too. He has nasty front kicks to the body. He has really fast lead leg head kicks. He's one of those type of fighters, like I said, where he's usually winning until he loses. If he had a chin, I think he'd be a threat for being in the top 10, top 5 of the weight class. But without it, he's kind of just a skilled glass cannon. He's also an elite wrestler. I mean, the guy isn't active with his wrestling as you'd want to see, especially when you got a guy that has a questionable chin. You'd want him to wrestle hard. And I think it's due to his cardio. He doesn't trust he could wrestle hard for 3 rounds, so he only goes for easy takedowns. But he's a great wrestler, and he could take guys down and hold him down. It's just he doesn't do that in too many of his fights. We did see him take down Roman Dolidze, and Dolidze was able to get him in a deep leg lock and kind of compromised him and then knocked him out. So hopefully if he takes down Bruno Ferreira, he'll be able to defend all his submissions and kind of grind him out. But Bruno Ferreira, tough opponent, but clear path to victory. I mean, if he can land clean on him, he's going to knock him out. He has 7 knockout wins. He has brutal power. And he's taken out almost all his opponents in the first round, too. 8 of his wins are first-round finishes. He's actually, I believe, never been to the 3rd round. And he's a shorter and compact fighter for the weight. He has a 5.5-inch reach disadvantage in this fight, so he needs to get inside. But he likes to switch stance, and he can close the distance fast. He'll pressure, be in and out, evasive, and pretty accurate as well with his overhands, his hooks. He has a good kicking game too, front kicks, round kicks. And if he can feint his way inside, be technical, he can land. And he is a guy that if he can land once in this fight, it could be over. But he is a little bit uncomfortable in exchanges. He likes to be all the way in or all the way out. When you back him up, Ferreira will kind of just look to explode him with power punches and get wild, and that's what makes Ferreira dangerous, but it also isn't really the most technical thing to do, and it's why he got knocked out in his last fight. It was a pretty bad knockout, too, so hopefully he doesn't lose any confidence coming in this fight. He kind of got a kick caught and got hit with the cross at the same time and got put out cold with ground and pound, so we're going to see how he kind of handles that, but he's incredibly strong, and you could see that when he goes for takedowns, hits big slams. And in this fight, I don't see him taking down Phil Hawes, though. If he does, I'd be very impressed. But Phil Hawes, I feel like maybe could take down Ferreira. It's just we don't know what Ferreira brings in terms of his defensive grappling at all. So that's going to be something interesting if Phil Hawes does go that route. But I see Phil Hawes as the more technical striker, better wrestler. He's the bigger fighter. But after the last two devastating knockout losses in a row for Hawes, he's untrustable, especially versus an explosive power puncher. So Brunno Ferreira is going to be the pick for me, and I'm going to say that Ferreira gets the first round knockout here. And up next, we got Ricky Simón. He's going to be taking on Mario Bautista in a really high-level fight for the UFC's bantamweight division. Ricky Simón, he's looking to rebuild after suffering a setback to Yadong Song. Simón was on a great run prior to that loss. He strung together 5 wins in a row, 31 years old, and he's in a position now where he needs to kind of maintain his ranking by turning back a streaking fighter and get back into that title picture. And for Mario Bautista, he's won 5 fights in a row, and he needs to take advantage of this fight because he's finally getting the marquee matchup he needs to get in that top 10 conversation. Most of the fighters that Bautista has defeated on this winning streak are low level, and even his one good victory over Damon Blackshear had just fought the week prior and took the fight on 7 days' notice. So this fight is kind of a big step up, and it's an opportunity to prove that he's at this higher echelon in the bantamweight division. So pivotal fight for Mario Bautista, but you look at Ricky Simón, he definitely has leveled up in terms of his skill set. His stand-up has gotten a lot better. He's more defensively responsible, and he's improved his footwork. He could switch stance and a little bit stiff upright, but he's not as stiff as he was previously. And he stays active with kicks on the outside. He'll throw kicks to all parts of the body. Most of the time he's just kind of kicking to stay active and score points, but he is doing just that. And he's low volume when it comes to the hands. He likes to more counterpunch. When he can back fighters up, he'll let go with combos. His jab is okay. He'll jab or double jab his way into the takedown. And he likes to use his head movement to slip and rip. And since he mixes in level changes too, he can be tricky. He has pretty big power. And in his right hand, if he lands clean, he can definitely knock you out. He got a slick knockout against Rafael Sunsao, dropped Jack Shore, and then submitted him. And those were his last 2 wins. He has 6 knockout wins, but we did see Song Yadong kind of lay the blueprint to me on how to defeat Ricky Simón. Song was very patient. He didn't exchange much or give Simón many openings to get the takedown. He waited for Simón to go first, and then he countered him, and Simón leaves himself open when he closes the gap. He can get touched up, and Simón himself got defensive. He got low volume, and Song was just kind of keeping that range well and just was able to easily win that fight. And Simón's durable, but he's been knocked out twice. He ended up eating a big left hook, and that left hook was money for Song for the whole fight and finishing Simón in the 5th round. So hopefully Ricky can put that behind him and show up focus Saturday. But one of the best wrestlers in the 135-pound division is Ricky Simón. He's incredibly physical. He's one of the strongest fighters on the roster, and he can hit big slams and then shoot the double and slam guys against off the cage as well. He's super adept at timing the level changes when he's in exchanges. So fighters can't be that aggressive with him because he can just time the takedown. He could shoot so fast and he blends it really well. And he thrives in the chaos. If you're aggressive against him, he's going to make you pay for that. And when he gets on top, he worries more about control. He looks to get that far wrist control and kind of smother you. He isn't a great jiu-jitsu guy, but he can hit arm triangles. That's his go-to submission, and he's incredibly difficult to take down. The only fighter who's been able to really take him down and have success with that type of game plan was Merab Dvalishvili. And Simón did better than most versus Merab. He got multiple takedowns himself and ended up submitting him in the 3rd round in that controversial fashion. But cardio is an asset for Simón. He's not going to get tired. And you look at Bautista, he's big fighter for the weight class. He's aggressive. He's well-rounded. He's well-conditioned. And he's mobile. He bounces in and out of range. He has decent 1-2s and 3-2s. He explodes in with big flying knees. On the inside, he'll go to the body. He'll throw elbows. Stays active in the clinch. He'll throw nice low kicks. And I think he has a lot of weapons that could work against Simón. I think the leg kicks are going to be effective against Ricky. And he can go high with head kicks as well, but he doesn't do it too often. Defensively, I do think he's really open to be countered, but he's fast and long, and he has to be a little more cerebral in this fight, try to maintain distance better. And Bautista will mix it up, shoot takedowns. He's decent wrestling, even though I would not advise him to try to wrestle here. And his wrestling defense is not the greatest to me. He lost the first round of his last fight against Damon Blackshear by getting taken down multiple times. And Ricky Simón is the best wrestler that Bautista has ever fought. Bautista is active off his back, and his get-ups aren't bad, so it makes him viable in this fight, gives him a chance. But I think that he just doesn't have the style to beat Simón unless he just catches him and finishes him with the knee or something. I see Simón getting a lot of clinch control, a couple takedowns, and taking the decision win here. So give me Ricky Simón to win this fight via decision. And up next, we got Jim A10 Miller. He's going to be taking on Gabriel Mowgli Benitez in a fight that should be a war right here. It should be a really fun fight. Jim Miller, obviously, is the ageless wonder, man. The guy's 40 years old and looking to make one last pit stop before his likely historic appearance on UFC 300. Even at his age, he still had the most success he's had in years recently. I mean, he's coming off an epic 23-second knockout win. He's won 4 of his last 5 fights overall. And he's going to be looking to get in, get out. Saturday, I have another quick night so he can turn around for UFC 300. You look at Gabriel Mowgli Benitez, and he's getting a huge opportunity here. He's going to be taking on a legend in Jim Miller. He's been in the UFC for a long time. This is his 14th UFC fight, so he's also put the work in. But Benitez has been an inconsistent fighter. He's 7-6, and he's really only managed to defeat low-level guys. Currently, none of the fighters who Benitez has beaten in the UFC are still with the promotion. Most of his losses have been against ranked guys or tough veterans, so he's going to have to break through finally to beat a guy like Jim Miller, and I just feel like Jim Miller is the better fighter everywhere. Gabriel Benitez, he has some heavy, fast kicks, he has okay southpaw boxing, but he's defensively irresponsible, he has a bad chin. Jim Miller, he's pinpoint, and recently he's been putting guys to sleep, and we've seen Benitez struggle with that southpaw look. I think that leg kicks are going to be something that Miller goes to in this fight. When he's fought other southpaws, we've seen him crush their legs, and Miller's the more durable guy. I think that he's live for the knockout, he's live for the club and sub. Benitez, when he gets taken down, he gives his back every time, and he's been getting hurt in the first round in a lot of recent fights. So cardio-wise, maybe you could say Benitez has the edge, and if it goes longer, he could start to get back in the fight, but both guys aren't the greatest as far as me conditioning-wise, and especially if Miller can do damage in the first, that's going to wear on Benitez's gas tank if he can't finish him. But I think Miller's going to get the first-round knockout or submission victory here. So give me Jim Miller to go out there and take out Mowgli Benitez in the first round. And up next, we got the co-main event. We got Matheus Nicolau. He's taking on Manel Kape. And both the co-main event and the main event are both rematches on this card, but they're still both good fights. I mean, this is a pivotal matchup for the UFC flyweight division. The first time these two guys met, it was a controversial split decision. Many people felt that Manel Kape won the fight, and in this matchup, he's more than a 2-1 favorite. So that's partially due to Nicolau getting knocked out in his last fight, but also due to most people feeling that Kape did enough the first time. And Matheus Nicolau, before his last fight, he had been undefeated in his second UFC run. He was 4-0. He had some major wins over top 10 guys. And if he had won his last fight against Brandon Royval, he would have been fighting for the title. But now he's going to have to start over again. And if he can beat someone like Kape, though, he's going to be right back in the mix. Probably would only need one more win to earn a title shot. You look at Manel Kape, he's won 4 fights in a row, but he's had a lot of marquee fights fall by the wayside. He was booked to fight former title challengers Alex Perez, Kai Kara-France. He was booked against former flyweight champion Deiveson Figueiredo in 2023. And all those fights ended up falling by the wayside. He only fought once last year due to that, and it came against a UFC debutant who stepped up on short notice. So that was definitely unfortunate for Kape. And Kape also claimed to have had fought that fight with a broken rib. So it's pretty impressive how he performed if that's true. And Kape has a lot of fans due to his trash talk, his fun style. So I don't know if beating Matheus Nicolau would be enough to warrant a title shot. But he has a good chance to get the title shot with the win here just off of his brand. One major difference in this fight for both guys that I don't hear many people talking about is the fact that the last time Manel Kape fought Matheus Nicolau, he did it on only 5 weeks' notice. he had just fought Alejandro Pantoja 5 weeks before he fought Matheus Nicolau as well. So came back extremely fast and fought two high-level guys in short order. So you know that he maybe wasn't 100% going into that fight. He said 4 months off to heal, get mentally ready for this rematch. So definitely I think he's in a better spot. But you could make a similar argument for Nicolau in that regard too. Nicolau, when he fought Manel Kape, it was his first fight back in the UFC. So there was a lot of pressure, I'm sure. And it was his first fight in a year and a half. It's been around 9 months since he took off due to the knockout. So it's also not necessarily the greatest circumstances for Nicolau coming into this fight, but at least he's had a little bit of less time off, and he's been fighting more high-level opponents. He's been in the UFC, so I think both guys are going to be more comfortable and confident than they were entering the first fight. And the first fight was fun to watch. It was pretty high level. Throughout the entire fight, Magomed Ankalaev was able to back Nicolau up. He controlled the center, but in round one, Nicolau was able to time a double. He got Kape down. He held him down for pretty much the entire round. Kape got back up once, but he got taken down again. And in the second round and the third round, Nicolau couldn't get his takedown game going, though. We saw Magomed Ankalaev kind of run away with round two just off of pressure, landed some big punches. Round three was super close, though, because Kape kind of only has himself to blame for losing. Nicolau was landing some slick counters, clean on the chin, and Kape was too comfortable just eating them. He didn't respect Nicolau's power. He took too many punches without returning anything. He ended up not really doing much. And then in the last 2 minutes, he turned it up and landed some big shots. But if he just would have started throwing more volume earlier in the round, he definitely would have won the fight, in my opinion. Because whenever they were in exchanges, the technique and the power edge for Kape was huge. And Kape was worried about committing hard, I believe, due to being taken down again. And I think this fight, he can't be as worried about that. He needs to be aggressive and try to find that chin. When you look at these guys, I mean, Nicolau, he's 8-0 in decisions. And you look at Manel Kape, he's kind of has a janky record in decisions. And Matheus Nicolau has been knocked out in all of his losses. So I think for Manel Kape, I mean, try to land a front knee up the middle, a flying knee, an uppercut. We see Nicolau has had issues with those strikes up the middle and knock him out, take the judges out of it. But I feel like Kape, if he does just be more aggressive, he's going to be able to win the fight via decision too. For Nicolau, he needs to have the same game plan as he had his last fight, but just be a little bit more evasive or more successful getting the takedowns. He proved if he can get on top, he can control for the whole round. So any takedowns improve his chances of winning a lot. I have to go with Kape in this fight, though. I just think minimal adjustments get him the win, and if he's sharp, he'll probably get the knockout. So I'm going to say Kape goes out there. I'll predict him win via second round KO TKO in this fight. And finally, we got the main event here. We got Magomed Ankalaev. He's taking on Johnny Walker. And obviously, we just kind of saw this fight recently and didn't exactly see how it would have played out. We saw Ankalaev go out there, throw an illegal knee really early. So these guys definitely have unfinished business. And both guys are in title contention. So it's good they're getting this fight done and finding out who the definitive winner is. Both fighters seem confident they're the better fighter and they're eager to accept this rematch. So on the feet, I think Walker's actually slightly more effective in this matchup. Magomed Ankalaev, he's a technical southpaw counter striker. He has a slick jab. He has good counter straights, counter overhands, front kicks up the middle. He'll throw punches to the body, which we'll talk about soon. He has fast high kicks, and he'll wait on his opponents, though, and he can get hit at distance with kicks, as we saw versus Blachowicz. Johnny Walker is the more active kicker, and he needs to have the same exact game plan he did against Anthony Smith. He needs to keep his hands high, evade that left-hand counter, just look to jab, use his leg kick, score points, and be evasive. And if he can kind of do that, I think he could have a lot of success standing. If he goes back to his old tendencies and runs in wild, Ankalaev will make him pay and can knock him out. So that makes the stand-up competitive, no doubt. But obviously Walker's chin is always going to be a red flag until he retires. And even when he's the better striker, his opponents usually need one super clean, heavy shot to get Walker out of there. And Walker has that ability too. I mean, don't get it twisted. If he lands heavy on Ankalaev's chin, we could see Ankalaev get knocked out too. But But you see the first fight, I mean, we didn't get to see too much striking, a lot of feeling out early. And then Ankalaev landed that body punch where... What do you guys think in the comments? I mean, to me, it looked like Johnny Walker faked the... Like, he got hurt to the body and then went for that flying knee and almost knocked it... Almost landed. I don't know if you could say almost knocked him out, but it looked like that flying knee was really close. And Ankalaev was able to just evade it, used it to get the takedown. And that's kind of where the fight ended up finishing. But I think Ankalaev is going to want to use his wrestling a lot in this fight. He can kind of mitigate the leg kicks and overall danger of Walker by just nullifying him, keeping him close against the cage or on top. And it will be interesting to see if Ankalaev can actually get this fight to the ground without a big action that gets Walker off balance or out of position, like that flying knee attempt. If Ankalaev can back Walker up and get him down, he could probably dominate the position, stay active with ground and pound. I mean, we saw Anthony Smith get a couple takedowns on Johnny Walker, which isn't good. Ankalaev isn't a big finisher from the top position, so I feel like he'll just be able to hold Walker down or hold him against the cage and do enough to not get broken up. But cardio-wise, both guys, I think they have good cardio and good toughness. But I feel like this line is off, if I'm being honest. I don't understand how you can line Ankalaev as such a huge favorite, like a minus 450. Walker isn't a bum. He's a dangerous big guy. He has weapons. And the first fight was competitive until the foul at the end. So I just think the line's a little bit disrespectful. I mean, I haven't said that for a pure prediction. I think Ankalaev's going to win this one, but it will be kind of slow and boring fight unless Walker goes back to his old ways. If Johnny fights emotional, he could definitely get knocked out. But if he fights smart, keeps it standing, I think he gives himself a much better chance to win than the odds indicate. And I think this fight's going to go longer if Ankalaev wins. I think he's going to slow the pace. He's going to use wrestling. And even if these guys are striking, I think there's going to be a lot of respect, even after what happened in the first fight where these guys are kind of looking in the mirror at each other from the outside and things like that. So I'm going to go Ankalaev via decision as the prediction. I think that this fight could go long, and I think it's going to be fairly close. I think the line's off. I think it's going to start to move down and down as the week goes on. But, yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I think that Ankalaev will win via decision, but kind of a pass for me on the money line in that fight unless you're confident enough to be betting on Johnny Walker. So there you have it, guys. It's a full card breakdown of predictions for UFC Fight Night Ankalaev vs. Walker, UFC Vegas 84. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you learned something. If you're not a part of this channel, subscribe. I'm going to be doing these videos every week. I've been doing them for a long time. And besides that, like I said at the beginning of the video, I'm doing a free trial right now on patreon.com/MPredictionGuru. So go over there. Check it out risk-free for the month. You got nothing to lose. You can see if you can make yourself some money. You could look at all the other content that I have on there. And really appreciate everyone that goes over there, helps support the channel. And thank you guys a lot. But besides that, let's talk about the most confident pick in the part of the week. For my most confident pick, I mean, I guess I'll go with Gene Silva, kind of a cop-out, but I think he'll be my most confident pick of the week there. For the part of the week, I'll give you guys a parlay with Manel, Kape, and Tom Nolan. That'll be my parlay of the week. I feel like that's a pretty safe parlay right there. So there you have it, guys. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you guys later. And definitely make sure to stay locked into the channel. Hit the like button, put a comment down below, and really appreciate you guys.